Yo, what is up, guys? It's Virtual 1670 here, and today I have another amazing source build for you. It's going to be a mixture between fire and cold, and the inspiration behind this build came from two people. The Paragon is from Uni, the one who did the first T100 on the source, and the other inspiration comes from a very good friend of mine. You guys might know him on Twitch, Barricade, who gives me the inspiration to add a little spiciness to this build. Giving us, the mixture of cold, which gave us the orb when we're attacking with our Hydras. Amazing. It does a lot of damage. So if you guys want to join me and the journey on clearing T100s and helping your friends out, let's check out the build and stop talking. So let's start off with the skills. What we're going to do is we're going to add 2 points to Firebolt. We're then going to go down to core skills, and we're going to put 3 points into Frozen Orb, 1 point into Enhanced Frozen Orb, and 1 point into Greater Frozen Orb. Now, the reason why we're taking Greater Frozen Orb is because it has a chance to make enemies vulnerable for 2 seconds. Now, when the enemies are frozen, they become vulnerable, which gives our Hydras an increased damage spike. Moving down to the defensive skills, we're going to take 3 points into Glass Cannon, 1 point into Flame Shield, all the way up to Shimmering Flame Shield. Moving down to Frost Nova, we're going to put 1 point into Frost Nova, all the way to Mystical Frost Nova. Moving down to our Conjuration skills, we're going to put 5 points into Hydra, 1 point into Enhanced Hydra, and Summoned Hydra. After we're done there, we're going to put 1 point into Ice Blades, 1 point into Enhanced Ice Blades, and 1 point into Summoned Ice Blades. Moving over, 1 point in Align the Elements, and 3 points into Protection. Moving over, we're going to put 3 points into Conjuration Mastery, which gives us 3% multiplicative damage for each conjuration that is active. Then we're going to move over to Lightning Spear, put 1 point into Lightning Spear, all the way down to Invoked Lightning Spear. Once we're done with conjurations, we're going to move down to Mastery. And in Mastery, we're going to put 3 points into Inner Flames, 3 points into Devouring Blaze, and 3 points into Crippling Flames. Moving over, we have 1 point into Static Discharge, and 3 points into Shocking Impact. Moving down to Ultimate, we're going to put 1 point into Permafrost, 3 points into Warfrost, 1 point into Fiery Surge, and 3 points into Endless Pyre. Moving down to key passives, we're going to put 1 point in Asu's Ferocity, and that is it for the skills. Let's move on to the gear and some of the enchantments we have in this build. So moving on to the gear, we're going to start off with the helmet, which is Exploiters. You have 20% increased crowd control duration. While enemies are unstoppable, you deal 36% increased damage to them. This ranges from 20 to 40%, depending on what aspect you have. Moving down to the chest piece, Raiment of the Infinite. Now, you don't have to go with Raiment of the Infinite. You can pick a chest armor that has a lot of mitigation and DR on it, which would be more wise, and then use the Protector. Moving on to the gloves, Serpentine. Serpentine is very important to us as it gives you 1 additional Hydra, but Hydra duration is reduced by 19%. You want to go for a 20% one as it reduces the duration. Moving on to the pants, Disobedience. You gain 50% multiplicative increased armor for 4 seconds when you deal any form of damage stacking up to 30%. Moving on to the boots, Binding Embers. Flame Shield lets you move unhindered through enemies. Enemies you move through while Flame Shield is active are immobilized for 2.5 seconds. Moving on to the weapon, Storm Swell. You deal 15% multiplicative increased damage to vulnerable enemies while you have a barrier. This is important as it gives us multiplicative damage and we're constantly proccing our barrier. Moving on to Edge Master. Skills deal up to 18% multiplicative increased damage based on your available primary resource when cast, receiving the maximum benefit while you have full primary resource. This is crazy, as we always have a full resource bar, which allows us to get the full benefit from that multiplicative damage. I had an 18%, but you can go from 18 to 20%. Moving on to the ring. Conceded. Deal 23% increased damage while you have a barrier. Again, working with your storm swell. Moving on to the retribution. Distant enemies have an 8% chance to be stunned for 2 seconds when they hit you. You deal 16 multiplicative increased damage to stunned enemies. Moving on to the neck piece. Control. You deal 38% multiplicative damage, more damage to immobilized, stunned, or frozen enemies. Now, all of this stuff comes together as when we look at our enchantments, we're going to be taking Ice Blade enchantment. Chilled enemies have reduced movement speed. Repeatedly chilling an enemy will freeze it. This will give us the chance to get away from monsters, to not get hit by certain mob types, and slowing them. Moving on to the next enchantment, we took Frozen Orb enchantment. Now, whenever you cast a non-basic skill, you have a 30% chance to launch a Frozen Orb at a nearby enemy. So you're standing there casting your Hydras. Say you cast 4 Hydras, a Frozen Orb will come out and hit the mob in front of you. Frozen Orb's explosion has a 30% chance to make all enemies hit vulnerable for 2 seconds. Frozen Orb always makes frozen enemies vulnerable. This is good because this allows us to make whatever's in front of us vulnerable, allowing our Hydras to do even more damage than what they're supposed to. Vulnerable is very important to us as we do a lot of standing back. We don't really jump in any of the mob's faces, but having this Frozen Orb and having the chance to always make something vulnerable, and then moving over to our Ice Blade enchantments, it's all comes together and helps out in a humongous way. So moving on, we're going to move on to our Paragon now. Let's check it out. So moving on to the Paragon. In the first board, Paragon board, we're going to take Conjure. Conjure gives you 184% Conjuration skill damage. This is important as we use our Conjurations to deal damage, and also gives our Hydras more damage. Conjuration skills have 20% increased duration. Now, moving on to the next board, which is going to be Enchantment Master. In Enchantment Master, we're going to come down here and take Enchanter. 75.5% non-physical damage, as our Hydras are doing non-physical damage. For each skill equipped in your enchantment slots, gain 13% resistance to the skill element. Now that doesn't really matter as resistances don't do much for us right now, but let's hope they change that in the future. Moving on to the next board, which is Burning Instinct. Your burning damage is increased by 40% of your critical strike damage, further increased by 5% for every 20 intelligent you have, which gives us a bonus of 544%. Moving on to the glyph, we used Destruction, 97% critical strike damage. Critical strikes increases all damage the enemy takes from you by 2% multiplicative for 10 seconds up to 12% multiplicative. Once we're done in this board, we're going to move up to Searing Heat. In Searing Heat, we're going to be taking Pyromaniac. Now, Pyromaniac, every pyromancy skill you cast or every second you channel Incinerate increases your fire damage by 2% for 6 seconds up to 10%, both multiplicative, plus adding a 14.3% fire damage. Once we're done in that board, we're going to move over to Elemental Summoner. Your Conjuration skills have a 5% reduced cooldown or mana cost per Conjuration skill you have equipped, which is quite a few, 3 or 4 of them. We're going to move down to the Glyph and we take Control. 101% damage to crowd control enemies. You deal 10% multiplicative increased damage to slowed or chilled enemies, or instead 20% multiplicative increased damage to stun or frozen enemies. Once we're done with that board, we're going to move all the way around and realize that there's no more boards to go over. Okay. So that is the source build that I am using right now, guys, to clear my T100s. I've helped a lot of people out with this build. I don't see any issues other than the fact that Sorcerers got tanked this season. Yes, Season 1, Sorcerers got the crap stick for defenses. But we have overcome and we have moved forward, and our journey to get even better is coming in the future with the new patch that is dropping. So I'd like to thank you guys again. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys liked the video. Don't forget to put a thumbs up. If you liked it, subscribe. Don't forget, I do stream on Twitch TV. You guys can come check me out. That's Virtual 1670. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys later. Peace out, guys.